The day my baby sister turned 1 month old. My father took her out for the celebration. A car hit them on the road. My mother, a woman worth hundreds of millions, pulled every available doctor to her first love side instead, 'cause he said the sight of blood made him sick. That night, my father and my newborn sister died where they lay. I was blamed for it all and thrown out of the house. 20 years later, I became Bass Swanson, president of Bedrock Technologies, the man at the head of a $10 billion empire. On the day of our annual conversion review, my assistant placed 5 intern files on my desk. He tapped the first one with obvious admiration. "Mr. Swanson, this one's Abner Sullivan. Outstanding numbers, nearly perfect scores from every supervisor." I opened the file, then I saw the family section. Those 2 names I could have burned to ash and still remembered them. After a long silence, I told my assistant to bring all 5 interns in the full time. Offers went out one by one, smiles, thanks, relief. Then I reached the last file, lifted my eyes to the young men already certain of victory, and slid a termination notice across the table. "Abner Sullivan, you didn't pass." The conference room went dead. Still, the other 4 interns froze with their contracts in hand. My assistant shot me a panicked look. "Mr. Swanson." I ignored him and looked at Abner. He looked so much like his father. The same handsome face, the same sharpness, the same arrogance bred deep into the bones. Out of everyone in the room, he was the only one who didn't lose composure. He blinked once, surprised, then calmly opened the folder he'd brought and laid out his documents. "Mr. Swanson, I interned here for 3 months. I handled 4 projects and led 2 independently. My client renewal rate was 100%. His voice was steady, neither humble nor rude. "I received top evaluations for 2 straight quarters. My numbers are the highest in my cohort." He paused and met my gaze. "That makes me first among everyone who started with me. If you're cutting me, you owe me a reason." His chin lifted a fraction. "No panique, no hate." Only offended pride, the kind that came from growing up protected, cherished, certain the world would always make room for you. I leaned back and let the silence drag before I answered. "There's no reason." Abner's face tightened. "This is my company," I said. "If I want to let you go, I will." A crack finally showed. He recovered fast and gave a cold laugh. "Mr. Swanson, this is workplace bullying." He shut the folder. "If this gets out, it may affect your company's reputation." I smiled faintly. "I'm not bullying you. If this feels like bullying, maybe that says more about you. People who are actually clean don't immediately assume they're being targeted. Only guilty people do that." Landed for the first time. Real anger flashed in his eyes. My assistant leaned close and whispered urgently, "Mr. Swanson, please reconsider." He really did perform exceptionally. And the board checked his background. His mother runs Sullivan Group. She's K. So hey, Sullivan. I cut him off, then looked back at Abner. "That's your mother, isn't it?" He straightened at once, pride returning. "So you've heard of my mother." There was no hiding the confidence in his voice. "Now then you understand. Keep me on and someday there may be a partnership between Bedrock and Sullivan Group." He said it like he was offering me a gift. 20 years on, the Sullivan Group was nowhere near its former glory, but it was still far above most companies in the city. "No need," I said. His expression froze. "I don't want anything from the Sullivans." I held out the letter. "Now you can go." That finally broke him. His face flushed red with fury. "Fine." He snatched the paper off the table. "Mr. Swanson, I'll remember today. I hope you won't regret it." After he left, I dismissed the other interns too. My assistant was still trying to process what he'd seen. "Mr. Swanson, why would you do that? Sullivan Group is declining." "Yes, but it's still a giant. Firing the Sullivan heir in public isn't wise." Finish my tone. "Shut him up. Make copies of every project file Abner Sullivan touched during his internship. Bring them to my office." That afternoon, my assistant had just set the files down when the office door was shoved open. A man strode in with contempt written across his face. Bespoke suit, luxury watch. The casual swagger of someone used to being indulged. Bill James, 20 years had been good to him. "You're the one running this company." He sat across from me and tossed his Maybach tea onto my desk. "Who gave you permission to fire my son?" I didn't answer right away. I poured myself tea first. "Mr. James," I said at last, still as loud as ever. "Looks like life's treated you well." That made him pause. He stared at me for several seconds, searching my face, unable to place me. He didn't remember me at all. 20 years ago, I'd been a skinny 6-year-old boy, cast out of that house because of one sentence from him. Now I was the head of a billion-dollar company. Of course, he wouldn't recognize me. He assumed I knew him. only because he'd married into the Sullivan family. Since you know who I am, let's skip the nonsense. He said lazily, Abner is my son. Having him work here is already an honor to your company. But a man like him shouldn't start as an ordinary employee. Put him directly into management. I smiled. Is he worthy of that? His face changed. What did you say? I set down my cup. I said, he isn't worthy. He shot to his feet. Furious. Listen carefully. Swanson, my son working here is doing you a favor. Do you know how many partnerships the Sullivans close in a year? One word from my wife. And your company walks away with enough to set you up for life. I watched him rant and couldn't help wondering if he'd worn that same ugly face when he forced my father out all those years ago. Sorry, I said. A partnership with the Sullivans is beneath me. Then I pressed the intercom. Send up 2 security guards. They arrived quickly and grabbed him. Bill's eyes widened in disbelief. Men like him weren't used to being touched, much less thrown out. And the door slammed open again. A tall girl in her early 20s stormed in, dressed head to toe in expensive streetwear. She pointed at me and exploded. Who the hell do you think you are putting your hands on? My father. Keep this up, and I'll have my mother shut this trash company down tomorrow. I looked at her face. The shape of Bill's brow and eyes stamped all over it. And another image sliced through me. That rain-soaked night. 20 years ago. The father who adored me. The baby sister who had only lived 1 month. If she had survived, she would have been around this girl's age. This is your daughter, I asked, unable to fully steady my voice. Of course, Bill snapped. Yvette Sullivan, my daughter with K. I stared at them both, then smiled. Good. I stood and looked at Yvette. Go home and tell your mother. I'd love to see how she plans to deal with me. The guards dragged them out. When the office finally went quiet again, I sat down and drank the cold water on my desk in one swallow. This was only the beginning. I'd known that from the moment I saw Abner's file. I gave my assistant a second order. Pull everything on. Yvette Sullivan detailed. The report came fast. Yvette Sullivan, 21, college senior, currently interning at the city TV station. The TV station. I stared at the page for a long time, then picked up my phone and made the call anyway. It was answered almost immediately. Ass, why are you calling this late? Weren't you busy today? Charlotte Joyce, my girlfriend, star producer at the city TV station. I didn't want to drag her into any of this, but she was the only person who could help me. Do you have an intern there named Yvette Sullivan? Yeah, Charlotte said at once. Sullivan Group's heiress, apparently. How do you know her? I hesitated, then said, I don't want to see her there anymore. Can you let her go? Silence. Charlotte knew me too well. She knew I didn't throw my weight around for nothing. Bass, she said softly. What happened? Nothing. I kept my voice low. I just don't like the Sullivan family. She didn't push. Okay, I'll handle it. Some of the pressure in my chest loosened. I'll pick you up tonight after work. Said after work. I drove to the station. I had barely stepped out of the car when I saw Yvette at the entrance, being held back by 2 security guards and still screaming. On what grounds are you firing me? Because I cursed a few people out at work. Let me tell you, my mother is K. Sullivan. You cross me, you cross the entire Sullivan Group. A staff member beside her was trying to calm her down. Miss Sullivan, please. You hit a colleague first. We're just following procedure. Procedure. I am the procedure. If that little bitch isn't fired today, and on her knees apologizing to me, this isn't over. At that moment, Charlotte came out of the building. She saw me, walked straight over, and slipped her arm through mine. Been waiting long? Not at all. Eva saw the gesture. One look at us told her exactly who was behind this. You, she shrieked. It was you, Swanson. Getting my brother fired wasn't enough. So now you're coming after me, too. She broke free and lunged toward me with her hand raised. Charlotte's expression turned cold. She stepped in front of me and said to the guards, Get her out of here. They seized Yvette again and dragged her off, while she screamed over her shoulder. Swanson, you think you can touch the Sullivan family? My mother won't let this go. Her voice faded into the distance. Charlotte turned to me, worry written all over her face. Sullivan's been one of the most respected names in this city for years. What happened that you'd go this far? I shook my head. I still couldn't tell her. That night, an unfamiliar number called me. I knew the voice the moment I answered. K. Sullivan, 20 years. Hearing her again tightened something inside me, sharp and involuntary, like an old wound splitting open. So you're the Swanson who runs Bedrock Technologies? She asked. There was still condescension in her tone. like she was already judging whether I was worth speaking to. That's me. Who gave you the nerve to go after my children? I laughed once. Cold. Miss Sullivan, I think you've got it backwards. Sullivan Group has already been pushed out by the market. Bedrock is in another league. Why would I waste my time targeting a failure? You? A cold laugh came through the line. Fine, very good. Young and reckless. No idea who you're dealing with. You think Bedrock is untouchable? Let's see how many days you last. I'll be waiting. I hung up. She moved fast. By the next morning, my assistant rushed in with his phone. Face pale. Mr. Swanson, you need to see this. Number 3 on the trending list. Bedrock Technologies president leads a sordid private life. I scrolled. Paid accounts were posting long threads about how a man barely past 20 couldn't have become company president without a powerful backer. Then came the rumors about Bedrock's core technology, claiming it was all hype, that we were fooling the market and selling empty promises. Several partners have already called. My assistant said, voice tight, if we don't respond quickly, they may pull investment. Before I could answer, someone from PR knocked and hurried in with a laptop. It's worse. Mr. Swanson. Abner Sullivan posted a video. I took the laptop. In the video, Abner sat in front of the camera in a crisp suit, every angle polished. These are the projects I completed during my internship at Bedrock Technologies, he said, calmly presenting the reports one by one. Everyone was my own work. I had the best performance in my class. Yet Mr. Swanson fired me in front of everyone without reason. Then he paused, his eyes reddening slightly. It was only afterward that I learned. 2 female interns had private contact with Mr. Swanson. I don't want to make reckless accusations, but the facts speak for themselves. The video ended with a side-by-side image of Abner and one of the interns. Caption, where did I fall short? My assistant slammed a hand onto the desk. This is nonsense. An intern did back office work. She doesn't even have project metrics to compare. The PR director looked close to panic. Mr. Swanson, public opinion has completely turned. Everyone's calling it workplace bullying. Maybe we should release a statement. I nodded, yes, we should. But my answer wasn't the clarification. I sued Abner Sullivan for defamation and damage to Bedrock's reputation. That sent the Sullivan family into a frenzy. Not long after, K. Sullivan contacted the TV station and arranged a fully live, televised confrontation. Then she sent word asking whether I had the courage to appear. I was about to agree when Charlotte rushed over and stopped me. Bass, don't go. Kay bought off the host and the panel guests. They've already scripted the whole thing. The second you walk in, the attacks will start. I listened quietly, then asked only one question. Can you get me access to the control room during the broadcast? She blinked. That part, yes. But that's enough. I sent Kay one message. I'll be there. Then I set down my phone and went into the bathroom. In the mirror, a man in a dark gray suit stood straight and still. 20 years from the night my father died. Until now, I had been waiting for this broadcast. I looked at my own reflection and spoke softly. Dad, I finally made it here. The rain in the city did not fall so much as it drifted, a cold, gray mist that hung between the glass towers of Bedrock Technologies and the dark, oil-slicked streets below. From the 62nd floor, the cars crawled like copper-backed beetles through the twilight. Bass Swanson did not look at the streets. He looked at the silver pocket watch, resting in his palm. It was an antique, its casing scratched and the crystal face long since replaced with cheap glass that did not quite fit the bezel. Inside, engraved in a delicate, hurried script, were the letters DS to LS. David to Lily, his father to his sister. The watch had been recovered from the glove compartment of a crushed sedan. 20 years ago, smelling of gasoline and damp earth. It was the only inheritance Bass had ever received. The technical audit is complete, Mr. Swanson, Leo said, his voice low as he stepped into the office. The young assistant held a thick leather binder, his fingers slightly trembling against the grain of the hide. We went back through the repository logs for the entirety of Abner Sullivan's 3-month tenure. Every commit, every pull request, every line of code he claimed to have authored for the core kernel of the Bedrock database. Bass did not turn around. And it's as you suspected, Leo murmured, his eyes scanning the floor. He didn't write a single line of the optimization algorithms. He spent his first 6 weeks convincing the junior engineers to upload their scripts under his credentials. Then, during the final month, he accessed the secure staging environment using an administrative key card that, well, it wasn't issued to him. Whose card was it? The director of infrastructure, Leo said. The man was hired 3 years ago. Before that, he spent a decade as a senior consultant for the Sullivan Group. Bass let out a slow, silent breath. It was a classic corporate play, old money, attempting to extract the marrow of a rising competitor through quiet, systemic, parasitic action. Sullivan had realized years ago that the Sullivan Group's legacy manufacturing and real estate holdings were crumbling under the weight of a digital economy. She had sent her golden boy, her beloved heir Abner, to steal the foundation of Bedrock's automated logistics engine. The board is terrified, Leo continued, his voice tightening. The trending videos Abner posted yesterday have already knocked 3% off our pre-market valuation. The public is eating it up. The narrative of the cold, arrogant tech billionaire crushing an idealistic, brilliant intern. It's a perfect story for the current climate. And now, the live broadcast tomorrow evening is being promoted as a reckoning for Bedrock. Let them promote it, Bass said softly. He finally turned, his face shadowed against the floor-to-ceiling glass. Have you secured the original server logs from the third-party backup facility in Geneva? Yes, sir. It's a sealed physical drive. No network access, no possibility of remote wiping. We have the digital signatures of every file Abner accessed, including the intellectual property he copied to an external flash drive on the evening of the 12th. Keep it in the primary vault, Bass said. And Leo? Yes, Mr. Swanson? Do not let the legal team contact the network. If the TV station believes we are trying to injunction the broadcast, they will only use it as proof of our guilt. Let Sullivan build her stage. Let her buy every seat in the house. Leo paused at the door, his face a mixture of anxiety and deep, unexpressed loyalty. And Miss Joyce? She's been trying to reach you. She's very worried, Bass. At the mention of Charlotte's name, the coldness in Bass's chest softened, if only for a fraction of a second. Tell her I am preparing my statement. Tell her not to compromise her position at the station. She has already done enough by showing me where the cameras are pointed. Once Leo left, the silence of the massive office returned, heavy and suffocating. Bass sat at his desk, his fingers tracing the edge of the silver watch. 20 years. He remembered the smell of the rain that night, not like the clean, misty rain of today, but a thick, metallic downpour that tasted of rust and exhaust. He remembered his father, David, holding him by the collar of his jacket, his voice frantic as he tried to flag down a passing car. Please, my daughter, she's only a month old. She isn't breathing right. And then, the black limousine that had pulled to the curb, the tinted window, rolling down to reveal the pale, beautiful face of Sullivan, her eyes cold as winter ice. Beside her sat Bill James, his face slightly scratched from a minor fender bender 3 miles back, whimpering about the drop of blood on his silk handkerchief. Please, David had begged, his hands leaving streaks of muddy water on the sleek door of the limousine. The hospital is only 2 miles away. Let us in. Just the baby. Please. But had looked at David as if he were a ghost she had already laid to rest. You chose your path, David. You took the boy. Bill is in shock. His heart cannot handle the stress. Move your hands off my car. The window had rolled up. The exhaust had stung Bass's eyes. 2 hours later, in the corridor of a poorly funded district hospital where the only on-duty thoracic surgeon had been summoned to the private wing of the Sullivan estate to treat Bill James's severe emotional trauma, David's heart had stopped from internal bleeding. The baby Lily had slipped away 20 minutes before him, her tiny fingers turning the color of slate in Bass's small, helpless hands. The next morning, Sullivan's lawyers had arrived at the damp apartment Bass shared with his father. They had accused David of negligence, claiming he had caused the accident by driving an unroadworthy vehicle. They had taken the remaining savings, seized the apartment under a clause in the divorce decree, and left a 6-year-old boy on the steps of the municipal shelter with nothing but a wet suitcase. I didn't die, Bass whispered to the empty room, but the boy you threw away didn't survive either. The studio of City TV Station 1 was a cavern of black iron, heavy cables, and the white-hot glare of industrial LED rigs. The air smelled of heated dust and expensive hairspray. Charlotte Joyce stood in the shadows of the control booth, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Through the double-paned glass, she could see the main stage. 2 chairs were positioned opposite one another, separated by a low-glass coffee table. In the left chair sat Sullivan, She wore a tailored charcoal wool suit, her silver-streaked hair swept back into a severe, elegant chignon. Her posture was impeccable, the product of decades of old money and unshakable social status. To her right, standing just out of the camera's frame, were Bill James and Abner. Bill was looking at his gold watch, his face slightly bloated but still carrying the soft, preserved look of a man who had never done a day's hard labor. Abner was adjusting his collar, a faint, victorious smile playing on his lips. "They're going to destroy him, Charlotte," whispered Mark, the lead technical director, as he adjusted the audio sliders on the massive mixing desk. The host, Vance, has 3 pre-recorded segments ready to roll. One is an interview with a disgruntled former secretary from Bedrock. Another is an expert analysis from a financial firm that Sullivan owns through a shell company, claiming Bedrock's valuation is built on sand. It's a public execution. "Is the external feed set up?" Charlotte asked, her voice barely a breath. Mark looked around nervously, then tapped a small, black toggle switch labeled AUX4. "The fiber line from Bedrock server room is live. But if I switch to it, without the executive producer's sign-off, I'll be fired before the first commercial break." "If you don't switch to it," Charlotte said, turning her dark eyes to him, "the truth won't make it to the air. And this station will be sued into bankruptcy for broadcasting fabricated financial data." Bass Swanson isn't a victim, Mark. He's the storm. Down on the floor manager raised 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. The red light on camera 1 flared to life. "Good evening," Vance Sterling said, his voice a rich, baritone purr that had comforted the city's middle class for 15 years. "Tonight, we bring you an exclusive, live, unedited confrontation. On one side, a young man of undisputed promise, a top-tier scholar who claims his career was dismantled in a single afternoon due to corporate tyranny. On the other, the enigmatic, reclusive president of Bedrock Technologies, Bass Swanson." The camera panned to the empty chair on the right. A murmur ran through the studio audience. The chair was vacant. Abner Sullivan let out a short, mocking laugh, just loud enough for the microphone to catch. "It seems Mr. Swanson's courage is as hollow as his corporate statements." Sullivan did not smile. She simply looked at the camera, her face a mask of aristocratic pity. "I did not come here tonight to destroy a young man's company," she said, her voice smooth and resonant. "I came here as a mother. My son worked tirelessly. He believed in Bedrock. To see his efforts stolen and then to see him discarded and publicly slandered to protect the reputation of other elements within the company. It is a tragedy of modern corporate greed. I only ask for accountability." "And you shall have it, Miss Sullivan," Vance Sterling said, leaning forward. "We have repeatedly reached out to Bedrock's legal department, but..." The heavy double doors at the back of the studio swung open. The sound of their impact against the rubber stoppers echoed through the quiet room. Bass Swanson walked in. He did not wear the flashy, high-tech attire of the modern Silicon Valley executive. He wore a dark gray, bespoke 3-piece suit that fit his broad shoulders with military precision. His stride was slow, measured, and entirely devoid of hurry. His eyes, cold and dark as obsidian, fixed on Sullivan's face. The studio audience went dead silent. Sullivan's eyes narrowed. For a fraction of a second, a strange, phantom look of recognition flickered across her features, a brief shadow of a memory from a rainy night 20 years ago, but it was instantly replaced by her customary coldness. "Mr. Swanson," Vance Sterling said, recovering quickly, "we are glad you decided to join us. Please take a seat." Bass did not sit. He walked to the glass table, stood directly opposite Sullivan, and placed his hands on the back of the empty chair. "I prefer to stand," Bass said. His voice was not loud, but it possessed a strange, resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate the very air of the studio. "It makes it easier to look down on those who lie." "Let's begin with the facts," Vance Sterling said, his eyes flicking to the teleprompter. "Mr. Swanson, your former intern, Abner Sullivan, has provided this station with notarized copies of the performance reviews he received during his tenure. He has also shown us 3 distinct software architectures that he developed, which are currently running in your primary logistics platform. Do you deny that he was the top-performing intern of his cohort?" "I do," Bass said. "And on what grounds?" Vance asked, a thin, patronizing smile appearing on his lips. "We have the documents right here." Bass reached into his breast pocket and drew out a small, black leather notebook. He did not open it. Abner Sullivan's metrics were indeed high, but those metrics did not belong to him. During his 3 months at Bedrock, Abner Sullivan committed a total of 42 code integrations. Of those, 38 were identical to the work of a junior engineer named Marcus Vance, who was threatened with termination by Abner if he did not allow Abner to claim credit. That is a lie, Abner shouted from the sidelines, his face reddening. Marcus Vance is a mediocre developer who could barely handle his own load. I helped him. Marcus Vance's sister is currently receiving medical treatment paid for by a private foundation, Bass continued, his voice entirely level, ignoring the outburst. A foundation funded entirely by the Sullivan Group. The agreement was simple. Marcus Vance provides the code, Abner Sullivan takes the credit, and Marcus's family does not lose their insurance. It is a very efficient form of modern sharecropping, Miss Sullivan. Sullivan's fingers tightened on her leather handbag. Mr. Swanson, these are wild, unsubstantiated accusations. If you have no proof, I have the physical keys, Bass said. He looked toward the control booth. In the booth, Charlotte did not wait. She slammed her hand down on the AUX4 toggle. The massive screen behind the stage, which had been displaying a graphic of the Bedrock logo under a cloud of red dust, suddenly flickered. A high-definition security video played. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m., October 12th. On the screen, Abner Sullivan could be seen standing in the darkened server room of Bedrock Technologies. He was holding a physical master key card, swiping it through the security lock of the primary database tower. His face was clearly visible under the infrared camera. He inserted a small, blue USB drive into the console, his fingers moving frantically. The file he is copying in this video, Bass's voice sounded over the low hum of the video's audio feed, is the proprietary routing matrix for a North American supply chain, a technology that Bedrock spent $48 million developing. If you look closely at the key card he is using, the serial number is 0094A. It belongs to Mr. Richard Cole, former senior consultant to the Sullivan Group, whom you placed in our infrastructure division 3 years ago. The studio audience began to murmur. Vance Sterling looked frantically at his earpiece, but the executive producer's voice was silent. Charlotte had locked the control booth door from the inside. This is a setup, Bill James stammered, stepping onto the stage, his voice high and thin. That video is deep-faked. Technology can do anything these days. My son would never. Shut up, Bill, Sullivan said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through her husband's panic like a blade. She looked at Bass, her eyes dark with a calculating, deadly fury. Even if there was a security breach, Mr. Swanson, this is a matter for the courts, not a public broadcast. You have used your platform to humiliate my son. You think this technology makes you strong? The Sullivan Group owns 40% of the logistics infrastructure in this province. If we pull our transit licenses tomorrow, Bedrock's physical goods will rot in the warehouses. You cannot survive without us. I knew you would say that, Bass said. He reached into his pocket again and pulled out a second document. Which is why, at 4 p.m. today, Bedrock Technologies completed the acquisition of the Northern Transit Syndicate. We now own 51% of the rail and road links you rely on to transport your legacy manufacturing goods. If anyone is going to rot in their warehouses, Miss Sullivan, it is you. Sullivan's face finally lost its color. The aristocratic composure she had worn like armor for 40 years began to crack. You spent $3 billion to buy a dying transit syndicate just to spite me? No, Bass said, stepping closer to the table. The distance between them was now less than 3 feet. I spent $3 billion to strip away your last shield. Why? She whispered, her voice shaking with a sudden, deep-seated terror. Who are you? I have never met you before this month. Why do you hate us this way? Bass looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the elegant wrinkles around her eyes, the cold, pampered skin that had never known a day of hunger, the expensive diamonds hanging from her lobes. He saw the woman who had looked down from the window of a limousine and decided his sister's life was worth less than her lover's comfort. Look at me, Bass said. The use of her first name, spoken with such quiet, familiar contempt, made her flinch. 20 years ago, Bass said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was nevertheless captured by every microphone in the room. On a rainy night in October, a cheap blue sedan was struck by a delivery truck on the intersection of Highway 9 and 4th Street. Bill James let out a sharp, choked gasp. His eyes went wide, his hands flying to his mouth. No, no, it can't be. My father, Bass continued, was David Sullivan, your first husband, the man who worked 2 jobs to pay for your first business venture before you decided he wasn't distinguished enough for your new social circle.
Sullivan's breath hitched.
She stared at Bass's face, her eyes wild as she searched the features of the 6-year-old boy she had discarded so long ago. Julian, she whispered. You're Julian. Julian died, Bass said. He died of cold and hunger on the steps of the
Municipal shelter.
I am Bass Swanson, and I have come to collect the debt. The studio was so quiet that the hum of the air conditioning unit sounded like a distant gale. Julian, Kay Sullivan said, her voice suddenly changing, taking on a soft, maternal tone that made Bass's stomach turn. She took a step forward, her hands reaching out, her fingers trembling. Julian, my son. I didn't know. They told me you had been taken in by a wealthy family in the north. They told me you were
Safe.
If I had known. You knew, Bass said. His voice was like iron hitting stone. You signed the eviction order yourself. Your signature is on the document that seized my father's life insurance policy to pay for the scratches on Bill James's limousine. That was my lawyer's, she cried, her eyes darting to the cameras, realizing that millions of people were watching her dynasty collapse in real time. I was in grief. I had lost my husband. You lost nothing, Bass said. You gained Bill. And you gained the freedom to forget the family you abandoned. He turned to the main camera. But the world shouldn't just take my word for it. Let's listen to the emergency dispatch logs from that night. The ones your lawyers spent $3 million to seal in the municipal archives.
It's
amazing what $10 billion and a dedicated research team can retrieve from old backup tapes. Mark, don't you dare. Vance Sterling screamed, finally finding his voice.
cut.
The feed. Cut the power. But the screen behind them had already changed. A static-heavy audio waveform appeared. The voice that came through the speakers was clear, despite the age of the recording. It was Kay Sullivan's voice, 20 years younger, but filled with the same cold authority. This is Catherine Sullivan. I am currently on Highway 9. There has been an accident. My associate, William James, is suffering from severe chest pains and
shock.
I require the immediate dispatch of the chief of thoracic surgery from the City General Hospital to our private residence. The operator's voice was frantic. Ma'am, we have a report of a head-on collision at the same location. A blue sedan. There is an infant in critical condition. The nearest ambulance is 4 minutes away, but it must go to the infant first. Kay Sullivan's voice cut in, sharp and impatient. The infant's father is a common laborer. He has no standing. Mr. James's health is vital to the Sullivan Group's operations. If the chief of surgery is not at my home within 15 minutes, I will withdraw my family's funding from the hospital's research wing. Do you understand me? Let the others wait. They are not our concern. The audio cut to static. On the stage, Bill James collapsed onto his knees, his face white, his chest heaving as if he were having the very panic attack he had faked 20 years
ago.
Abner Sullivan stood frozen, his eyes darting from his father to his mother. The realization of his family's ruin settling into his bones like lead. He had spent his entire life believing he was a prince, born to inherit the city. Now he was the son of a monster, exposed before the world. Kay Sullivan did not fall. She stood straight, her jaw set, but her eyes were
dead.
She looked at Bass, and for the first time in her life, she knew absolute, irrecoverable defeat. You have destroyed us, she said, her voice barely audible. The stocks will crash tomorrow. The banks will call in our loans. The Sullivan Group is finished. No, Bass said. The Sullivan Group was finished 20 years ago. You've just been living in the ruins. He turned his back on them. Where are you going? She cried out, her voice cracking with a desperate, pathetic plea. Julian, you are my blood. You are my son. Bass stopped at the edge of the stage. He did not look back. My name is Bass Swanson, he said, and my family is buried in the municipal cemetery on the hill. You are nothing to me. The rain had stopped by the time Bass walked out of the studio. The air was clean and cold, smelling of wet asphalt and green leaves. The city. Lights stretched out below him, a vast, glittering carpet of gold and silver. Charlotte was waiting for him by his car, her coat pulled tight against the
Wind.
She didn't say anything as he approached. She simply stepped into his arms, her head resting against his chest. He held her close, feeling the steady, warm beat of her heart, the only anchor he had left in a world he had spent 20 years trying to burn down. "Is it over?" she whispered. "Yes," Bass said. "It's over." They drove in silence through the winding roads of the city, leaving the bright lights of the financial district behind, climbing higher into the dark, quiet hills where the city's dead slept. The cemetery was peaceful. The old oak trees dripped water onto the grass, the sound like a slow, rhythmic ticking of a clock. Bass walked down the gravel path, his boots crunching softly in the quiet.
He
Stopped in front of two simple headstones, side by side. David Sullivan, a loving father. Lily Sullivan, an angel too soon. The graves were clean, the grass around them neatly trimmed. Bass had paid a caretaker to look after them for years, though he had never visited them himself, not until he could stand before them with his head held high. He reached into his pocket and took out the silver watch. He knelt down, his knees sinking into the damp earth, and placed the watch on the stone of his father's grave. "I brought it back, Dad," Bass whispered. His voice was thick, the tears he had held back for 20 years finally spilling over his lashes, warm and silent in the cold night.
She didn't win.
None of them did. He felt a soft hand on his shoulder. Charlotte knelt beside him, her fingers wrapping around his, her presence a quiet, unyielding warmth in the dark. "They're at peace now, Bass," she said softly. Bass looked up at the sky. The clouds were parting, revealing the cold, bright stars of the northern autumn. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in 20 years, the air did not taste of rust and smoke. It tasted of the future.